The last balloon hadn't even touched the floor when I heard the deadbolt click. My father, Eric, didn't look at me. He just slid the key into his pocket and leaned against the door frame, his face unreadable. At the kitchen table, my mother, Anna, slid a black pen across the granite countertop. It stopped right next to the check my grandmother had just given me $200,000 for design school. "Sign it over to Austin," she said. Her voice wasn't asking. It was ordering now before the bank opens tomorrow. Drop. Comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I looked at my brother. Austin was packing the living room rug, smelling of nervous sweat and expensive cologne. He wouldn't meet my eyes, he just kept muttering to the floorboards, "I need it. They're going to kill me, you don't understand, these guys don't play." I looked at the cake on the counter. The happy birthday Emma icing hadn't even crusted over yet. And that is when it hit me, the cold, hard clarity that stops your heart for a second. This party wasn't a celebration, it was a containment strategy. They hadn't invited the neighbors to celebrate my future. They had invited them to keep me in the house long enough to harvest my resources. I realized in that moment that I wasn't their daughter, I was an asset. They had been fattening up for slaughter, I was livestock, and they were the butchers, the streamers, the smiles, the cake. It was all just camouflage for a robbery. I didn't cry, tears imply you think there is still a negotiation happening. I knew better. I picked up the pen, feeling the plastic dig into my skin. "I need my ID," I said, my voice flat. "It is in my room, I can't endorse a check this big without verification." My mother hesitated, her eyes narrowing. She looked at the check, then at me. "Make it quick," she said. I walked up the stairs, feeling their eyes on my back like laser sights. I didn't run, I didn't shake, I just walked. I entered my room and quietly locked the door. I didn't go for my ID. I reached under my bed and pulled out the duffel bag I had packed 3 weeks ago. Just socks, a hoodie, cash I had skimmed from my grocery runs, and my laptop. I had known something was coming. You always know when you live in a house built on secrets. The air pressure changes before the storm hits. I opened the window. The wooden trellis was right there. The one I had painted last summer, because Austin was too busy with his visionary ideas to do chores. The irony wasn't lost on me as I climbed down the very structure my own labor had maintained. I hit the grass with a soft thud. The living room curtains were drawn, glowing with the warm fake light of a family destroying itself. I didn't look back. I ran. I ran past the manicured lawns and the silent luxury cars until my lungs burned and the suffocating silence of the suburbs was replaced by the roar of the main road. I was out, but I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the opening shot. The diner smelled like burnt grease and floor wax. I sat in the corner booth, my hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. I wasn't shaking anymore. The adrenaline had burned off, leaving behind a cold, sharp clarity. I looked at the digital clock on the wall, 3:00 in the morning. I wasn't running because of the money. People think you run because of the dollar amount, but $200,000 is just paper. I ran because of the math. I had spent 18 years being the glass child, transparent, silent, and easy to look through so my parents could gaze adoringly at Austin. My brother was a black hole disguised as a visionary. First, it was the crypto mining rig that overheated the garage. Then, it was the tech startup that was going to disrupt the dog-walking industry. My parents poured their retirement savings, their equity, and their sanity into his ventures. They called it investing in genius. I called it what it was, throwing good money into a furnace. While Austin was burning capital, I was auditing my own existence to be as cost-effective as possible. I worked 3 jobs in high school, library shelving, tutoring, and freelance graphic design just to buy my own drafting supplies. I didn't ask for a car. I didn't ask for clothes. I made myself small so I wouldn't take up any space on their balance sheet. I remembered my high school graduation last month. I was the valedictorian. I had a speech prepared about structure and stability. I looked out into the audience, searching for my parents in the 3rd row. The seats were empty. My phone buzzed in my pocket while I was walking up the stairs to the podium, a text from my mother. "Austin has a migraine, we had to take him home. We are so proud of you though, take pictures." That was the moment the contract broke. I realized then that I wasn't a daughter to them, I was the spare tire. You don't think about the spare tire until the main one blows out. Tonight Austin blew out. He had borrowed money from dangerous people to cover his latest failure. And suddenly the spare tire was being dragged out of the trunk. They didn't want my money to help the family. They wanted to liquidate my future to pay for his past. I took a sip of the cold coffee, it tasted like battery acid. Outside the diner window, a sleek black sedan pulled into the empty parking lot. It was quiet, expensive, and out of place. Grandma Vivian's driver. I had texted her the moment I cleared the subdivision. She hadn't asked questions, she just sent the coordinates and the car. I slid out. Of the booth, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Victims cry about unfairness. Architects look at a crumbling structure, condemn it, and walk away before the roof collapses. I picked up my duffel bag. I was done being the structural support for a house that was never built for me. I walked out the door and got into the back seat of the car. It was time to go to war. Grandma Vivian's estate was quiet. It was the kind of silence that costs millions of dollars. Thick walls, manicured gardens, and a distance from the chaos of the real world, but my phone wouldn't stop vibrating against the marble nightstand. It was a digital seizure. I picked it up. 47 text messages. Austin was first. His texts weren't brotherly. They were the ravings of a cornered animal. You think you are clever, you are dead to me. If they come for me, I am giving them your address. He was terrified, and like all weak men, he wanted to make his fear my problem. Then the phone rang. It was my mother. I looked at Grandma Vivian. She was sitting in the wing-back chair by the window sipping Earl Grey tea, looking like a general reviewing a battlefield map. She nodded once. I answered and put it on speaker. Emma, my mother said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was disappointed. It was the voice she used when I got an A- instead of an A. Where are you? We need to fix this before it gets out of hand. I am safe, I said. That is all you need to know. Safe, she let out a sharp, incredulous breath. Austin is the one who isn't. Safe, do you have any idea what kind of people he borrowed money from? He is in his room right now hyperventilating. He is spiraling, Emma. That sounds like a consequence. I said not an emergency. How can you be so cold? She asked, and then she laid it out, the enabler's math, the toxic equation that had ruled my entire life. You know, Austin is different. He is sensitive. He feels things more deeply than you do. He breaks easily. You are like iron, Emma. You always have been. You can handle a setback. You can handle waiting a few years for school. You can work your way back up. Austin can't. If he falls here, he won't get up. I stared at the phone. There it was. The tax on competence because I was strong. I had to carry the weight because I didn't break. I was required to be the glue for the one who did. My resilience wasn't a virtue to them. It was a resource to be exploited. They weren't asking for the money because they loved him more. They were asking because they respected me less. They saw dreams as optional and his failures as mandatory. You are punishing me for being functional, I said. My voice didn't shake. You are penalizing the child who did everything right to save the one who did everything wrong. That isn't love, Mom. That is a hostage negotiation. It is family, she screamed. Grandma Vivian set her teacup down, the china clinked against the saucer, a sharp sound in the quiet room. She reached over and tapped the red icon on my screen. The call ended. The silence rushed back in heavy and protective. I looked at my grandmother. She didn't offer a hug or a platitude. She just stood up and smoothed her silk robe. Get dressed, she said. We have an appointment. It is time to stop playing defense. Grandma Vivian didn't have a sewing room. She had an office that smelled of mahogany, contract law, and old money. She sat behind a desk wide enough to land a plane on, tapping a silver pen against a leather-bound folio. She wasn't my grandmother in that moment. She was the woman who had built a real estate empire in Chicago during the 80s, eating competitors for lunch and using their bones for foundation work. We are not hiding the money, she said, her voice clipped and precise. Hiding implies guilt. We are fortifying it. 30 minutes later, her personal attorney arrived. Mr. Sterling didn't look like the kind of lawyer who chased ambulances. He looked like the kind who owned the hospital. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered strategy. He laid out the documents on the desk with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an amputation. We are establishing an irrevocable trust, Sterling said, uncapping a fountain pen. You will be the sole beneficiary. Your grandmother will be the trustee until you turn 25. The terms will be specific funds are for education, housing, and professional development only. It effectively handcuffs the money. Even if you wanted to give it to your parents, you couldn't. It removes the choice from the equation. I signed the papers. My signature felt different. This time heavier, permanent. With every stroke of the pen, I was building a wall between me and the people who raised me. Now, Vivian said, turning her chair to face me, we deal with the noise. Sterling pulled out a second document. A formal cease and desist order, he explained. It outlines that any further contact regarding financial demands will be considered harassment. It also notifies them that you have formally severed all financial ties. No more shared phone plans. No more insurance. You are a ghost to them. Emma, I looked at the paper. It felt cold. Do we really need to go this far? They are still my parents. Vivan sighed. It was a dry, dusty sound. Emma, look at me. Your parents aren't just bad with money. They are insolvent. I have known for years they refinanced their house 3 times to fund Austin's lifestyle. They are drowning in debt to keep up the appearance of being successful suburbanites while bleeding cash to cover your brother's mistakes. They don't want your money to get ahead. They need it to stay out of foreclosure. They are desperate, and desperate people don't have boundaries, they have targets. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. It wasn't just greed, it was a collapse. They had built a life on a foundation of lies and easy credit. And now that the bill was due, they were trying to use my future as collateral. This isn't a family dispute anymore, Vivian said, closing the file. It is a liquidation sale, and we are making sure you aren't part of the inventory. Sterling cleared his throat. He was looking at his laptop screen, his eyebrows knitted together in a frown that signaled the temperature in the room was about to drop. Miss Vivian, he said, his voice dropping an octave. Before we finalized the transfer, I ran a standard liability check on Emma's financial history just to ensure there are no liens or outstanding debts we need to clear. And Vivian asked, and Sterling said, turning the laptop around, "We have a problem, a $50,000 problem." I leaned forward, the leather of the chair creaking in the silence. On the screen was a bank ledger I had never seen before. It was titled with my name, but the account number was unfamiliar. "A UGMA," Sterling said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. A custodial account established 17 years ago by a great-aunt. It was meant to vest when you turned 18. Yesterday I stared at the screen. I remembered Great-Aunt Sarah vaguely. She smelled like peppermint and old books. I didn't know she had left me anything, according to the initial deposit and standard compound interest," Sterling continued. "This account should hold approximately $52,000, enough for a down payment on a house or a graduate degree or a safety net for a lifetime." He clicked a tab. "Current balance," he read, $0. The room seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my throat, a hard, sharp lump. "Where did it go?" "It didn't vanish," Sterling said. "It was extracted systematically." He pointed to the transaction history. 4 years ago, May 12th, a withdrawal of $15,000. August 4th, another $10,000. By December of that year, the account was drained. I looked at the dates. They burned into my retinas. May 12th, that was the month Austin launched his first guaranteed venture, a drop shipping business that required massive upfront inventory he never sold. August 4th, that was when he needed a new luxury SUV to meet clients for a business that didn't exist yet. They hadn't just mortgaged their own future to fund his delusions. They had cannibalized mine. They had looked at my safety net, my inheritance, my future stability, and seen it as nothing more than fuel for his ego. "They needed my signature," I whispered, "if it was a custodial account. And they withdrew it for non-benefit of the minor. They would need documentation." Sterling slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a digital scan of a withdrawal authorization form. At the bottom was a signature, Emma Marie Vance. I looked at it. The loop on the E was wide and fid. The slant was backward. It was my name, but it was my mother's hand. She had forged my signature to steal my future, likely sitting at the same kitchen table where she demanded the check last night. She hadn't just betrayed me yesterday. She had been betraying me for years, silently, stroke by stroke of a pen. "This is no longer a family dispute," Sterling said, closing the laptop. His eyes were hard. "This is felony fraud, identity theft, grand larceny. We aren't just protecting the new money, Emma. We have grounds to prosecute for the old money." I sat back. The grief I expected to feel didn't come. Instead, the final tether snapped. The last microscopic threat of guilt, the idea that maybe I was being too harsh, maybe they were just desperate, evaporated. Desperation is asking for help. They had eaten their own young to feed the golden calf. "Do it," I said. My voice was steady, cold as the Chicago wind. "Draft the charges. If they want a war, they can have one. But they aren't fighting their daughter anymore. They are fighting a creditor." The intercom buzzed 3 days later. It wasn't a polite chime. It was a frantic, rhythmic pounding that vibrated through the floorboards. I looked at the security monitor. My father, Eric, was at the gate, his face pressed so close to the camera it was distorted into a grotesque fisheye glare. Behind him, my mother was packing, wringing her hands. Austin was leaning against the hood of his car, looking less like a visionary and more like a fugitive. "Emma," my father's voice crackled through the speaker, distorted by static and rage. "We know you are in there. Open this gate now." I looked at Grandma Vivan. She was sitting calmly at the kitchen island, buttering a piece of toast. "The security team is 3 minutes out," she said without looking up. "Do you want to wait for them?" "No," I said. I picked up the manila folder Sterling had prepared. "I want to handle this." I walked down the long driveway. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that soaked through my hoodie in seconds. I didn't care. I reached the iron gate. I didn't open it. I stood on my side, gripping the cold metal bars. They stood on theirs. The power dynamic had shifted physically and metaphorically. I was on the inside. They were locked out. Get in the car, my father barked. He tried to summon the command voice, the tone that had ruled my childhood, but it cracked. He looked small in the rain. This charade is over, you are coming home and we are. To the bank. I am not going anywhere, I said, and neither is the money, you selfish, ungrateful little. Austin started lunging toward the bars. Do you know what you are doing to us? They are going to take everything. The house, the cars, everything. You took everything first, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the rain like a blade. I slid the documents through the bars. They fluttered onto the wet pavement. $52,000, $4 years ago, May 12th and August 4th. My mother froze. She looked down at the wet papers, recognizing her own handwriting on the forged withdrawal slips. Her face went grey. You didn't just want the tuition money, I said. You wanted it because you had already eaten the appetizer. You forged my signature. You stole my childhood savings to fund a drop shipping business that failed in 3 months. We intended to pay it back, my mother whispered. The enablers math again. Intentions as currency. Intent doesn't matter in court, I said. Fraud does. Identity theft does. I pointed to the security camera blinking red above us. Everything you say is being recorded and everything in that folder has already been sent to the district attorney's office. It was a bluff. Sterling was holding the file, waiting for my signal, but they didn't know that. The effect was immediate. My father took a step back as if I had pulled a gun. Austin stopped shouting. The air left the conversation. They weren't parents disciplining a child anymore. They were suspects facing a witness. You have 60 seconds to leave my property, I said. If you are still here when the security team arrives, I tell my lawyer to file the charges. I pressed the button, and you don't just lose the house, you go to prison. My father looked at me. For the first time in my life, he didn't look through me. He looked at me with fear. He saw the structure he had built, the lies, the debts, the control collapsing under the weight of the one pillar he thought would never break. Emma, please, my mother sobbed. We are your family. No, I said, you are my debtors and your credit is no good here. I turned my back. I walked up the driveway. I heard the car doors slam. I heard the engine rev. I didn't look back to see them retreat. I just kept walking toward the house, toward the warmth, toward the future I had bought with my own silence. 2 weeks later, the suburban house was listed for sale. It wasn't a strategic downsize. It was a fire sale. Grandma Vivian told me the news over breakfast. Austin had fled the state to avoid creditors, leaving my parents to face the wreckage alone. Their reputation in the neighborhood was gone, dissolved under the weight of foreclosure notices and gossip. I sat at Gate 42 in O'Hare International Airport, watching the planes taxi on the tarmac. My laptop was open, displaying the acceptance letter for the design program in New York. I had a new phone number, a new bank account, a new life. I pulled up my contacts list one last time. Mom, Dad, Austin. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt lighter. I pressed delete one by one. They were gone. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the terminal window. I wasn't transparent anymore. I was solid. I was an architect of my own life, and for the first time I was building on a foundation that wouldn't crumble. Have you ever had to break a cycle to save your own future? If you enjoyed the story, hit like and subscribe to the channel if you want more story like this. Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. God bless you.